They can't hear me. Oh, that's better. Okay. My name is Adris Harrell, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, I welcome those of you in the sanctuary and on our live stream. You are welcome, no matter who you are, what you own, whom you love, how you look, and where you are on your spiritual journey. For those of you who are visiting in person, we encourage you to visit the welcome table in the parish hall after the service. You can also go to our website, firstuuwilm.org, to learn more about us. Our Guest at Your Table program, promoting the worldwide work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, UUSC, continues today. Please visit the UUSC Literature and Honey Sales Table in the parish hall following the service for more information. All honey sales proceeds, plus a match by Doyle, go to support UUSC. Two weeks ago, Reverend Larry gave a sermon on courage, referring to a book called The Four Pivots: Reimagining Justice, Reimagining Ourselves. He talked about the first two pivots, awareness and connection. Today, he will be focusing on the last two pivots, vision and presence. Please join Reverend Larry in the Warner Room back there after the service from 12 to 12:30 to discuss the ideas in these sermons if you'd like. I saw him come in. All right. So minds for worship.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. And as far as I can tell, it looks like I'm the only one who's wearing a Halloween costume today. But I'm glad that you joined us, and I hope it's a trick or a treat for you to be here. You can decide. Our call to worship this morning was written actually by Reverend Kathy Thomas, who we lost recently, but I think it'd be nice to linger in some of these words that she has to offer as part of our opening words. I received these words from Karen Thomas, her daughter, who shared them with me. Reverend Kathy Thomas wrote in her statement about ministry, "This is my story, my song, my destiny, to bless the world, to heal some of the earth's brokenness, to bind up the wounds of the afflicted, to welcome the stranger. I am dancing on the edge of another threshold, knowing that to grow fully as a minister, or I would add, for any of us to grow, there must be changes that we cannot foresee in that labyrinth. But I am committed to the process of the labyrinth, growth and change and transformation in the divine mystery. And so as we gather this morning in worship, it's my hope that we may, each of us, embrace our own place in this world and find that the world embraces us as well. Find our own gift and give it. Continue our own path along life's labyrinth with faith. And may our time together give us strength and courage to do so. So may it be. Amen.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it. To face the world's darkness, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives. Please join me in singing hymn number 93, To Mercy, Pity, Peace, and Love, and rise in body or spirit. The words will be shown on the screen.
Mercy, pity, peace, and love, all praise.
please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Let us join together now in a time of prayerful meditation. This morning I have chosen some words by Reverend Gordon McKeeman, words from a man who dedicated his whole life to a strong and vibrant ministry, one who taught many theological students, and very cherished person who carried forward his faith as a Universalist minister into the faith that we have all inherited. He wrote, "How does one address a mystery? Cautiously. Let us go cautiously then to the end of our certainty, to the boundary of all we know, to the rim of uncertainty, to the perimeter of the unknown, which surrounds us. Reverently, let us go with a sense of awe, feeling of approaching the powerful holy whose lightning slashes the sky, whose persistence splits concrete with green sprouts, whose miracles are present in every place and moment. Hopefully, out of our need for wholeness in our own lives, the reconciliation of mind and heart, the conjunction of reason and passion, the intersection of the timeless with time. Quietly, for no words will explain the inarticulate or summon the presence that is always present, even in our absence. But what shall I say? Anything, any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request, any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself, or perhaps nothing, no complaint, no request, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. Simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. And at the end, say, Amen. So in the silence that follows, let's take a moment to gather our own sense of that presence of mystery, that being in the presence of mystery, and our own relationship with the mystery that is at the edge of our own knowing, with the mystery that lures us forward, with the mystery that confounds us, and the mystery that awes us. May we embrace that mystery in this shared silence. Each week that we gather, we take some time together to reflect upon whatever the concerns that we are holding in our own individual hearts or in our collective heart as a congregation. So let us be present to those concerns, the concerns that we might have about ourselves, the concerns that we might have about loved ones, the concerns that we might have about our world. And following a brief silence, I'm going to invite those of you who would like to speak aloud your concern in this community or write your concern in the chat. So let's begin first by attending to what it is that we are holding in our own heart. So if you would like to speak aloud in this room, your particular concern, this is the time to do so. Or if you want to, you may write it in the chat if you're attending online. What concerns are you holding in your heart today? For these spoken or unspoken concerns, we send our love, we send healing, and we wish peace and resolution. So may it be. Amen.
Please join me in a responsive reading called Religion by Vincent Silliman. The words will be above me. Let religion be to us life and joy.
Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be called to generous action.
Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and the right.
Let it be the sorrow that opens us for the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity.
Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood.
An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and of courage.
Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders.
Let it be to us hope and purpose, and a discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tasks.
Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere.
Holding before our eyes a prospect of the better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual. The suspense has been building. The buzz has been buzzing. Have you noticed it too? I didn't really know it until I attended the AV team meeting last Monday, our regular time to meet. And someone mentioned that they had been sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting for this part 2 of the sermon. It takes courage to pivot. Who knew? I offered part 1 a few Sundays ago. Now, I would call this a series, but I'm afraid the word series might be a little triggering for us today, so I'll call it the sequel. And now, at last, the suspense can subside. I do need to do a quick recap of part 1 in order for us all to be part of the conversation. So my foundational point in the first sermon is that cultivating courage is absolutely necessary in the time that we are in. I don't think I need to restate the obvious. We are living in a moment when so much is at stake. In encountering such a moment as this, courage might actually not be our first choice. Retreat, relinquishment, ruminating, resentment, and maybe even reclining might actually be among our preferred choices, right? In some of the conversation that I had after part 1 of the sermon, someone wanted to discuss my point that there are no exceptions because of age. No matter how young or old you are, we are in this time together. Since so much is at stake, we all need to find the courage to face it. Someone asked me, what about age? I'm 72. I think she was trying to slither out of any responsibility. Maybe, not quite. But I didn't say it then, but I'm going to say it now. It might actually be because of one's elder status that we do engage. The best that we can in this time, because this is part of our legacy to future generations. How we respond now is so important and such an important part of our legacy. Some of you heard me quote my friend Parker Palmer. his responses to such musing, and Parker is in his 80s now. He said, "It's unfair to lay all responsibility for the future on the younger generation. After all, the problems they face are partly due to the fact that we, their elders, screwed up. Worse still, it's not true that the young alone are in charge of what comes next. We, young and old, together hold the future in our hands." I don't think we can just sit idle right now. It's not a time to just merely pass the baton on to someone else. This is not a time to say, "Wake me up when it's over." Because more than ever, we need to be awake and engaged. I do believe that religion should be that consistent wake-up call, calling us to awake in the moment that we are in, evoking in us a deeper consciousness of our interrelatedness and our mutual responsibility for what is and what can be. Sure, our religion should provide us some comfort. Yet, religion should not numb us to the realities of this moment. Sure, retreat, resignation, resentment, ruminating, and even reclining are choices that we could make, and so many have. But the times that we are in, I hope, require us to feel this broader calling that was captured in the words by Vincent Silliman, the Unitarian minister, poet, and hymn writer, that were included in this responsive reading that Adris led us in this morning. He wrote, "Let religion be to us life and joy. Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous action. Let religion be to us dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us to serve more eagerly the true and the right, and let it be the sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity." That is not retreat. That is not resignation. It's not even reclining. It is a call to action, a wake-up call. Such a wake-up call requires that we have courage. Brene Brown defines courage as an inner strength and a level of commitment. And I would add that courage is also a collective strength and a collective commitment. It takes courage to acknowledge that we might not feel up to the task of our time. It takes courage to say we are overwhelmed by this moment that we are in. We'll find that we're not alone with any of those feelings or reactions. Yet the care for ourselves and our world that lures us here to this sanctuary or to view this service means that we are at least willing to show up for one another and for our world. Sometimes we need to draw upon one another's courage more than our own. Sometimes we need to allow our courage to be a resource for someone else. We gather together not just to be confirmed in who we already are, but to encourage us to be open to being transformed and to transform this world. I have loved Annie Dillard's admonition to churchgoers in her book, Teaching a Stone to Talk. Perhaps you've heard this one before. Referring to people going to church, Dillard writes, "Does anyone have the foggiest idea what sort of power we so blithely invoke? Or, as I suspect, does no one believe a word of it? The church is our children, playing on the floor with their chemistry sets, mixing up a batch of TNT to kill a Sunday morning. It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats and velvet hats to church. I'm just scanning the audience. We should all be wearing crash helmets, she writes. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews, for the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense, or the waking God may draw us out to where we can never return. How unprepared we might be for this transformation that we so blithely talk about and proclaim sometimes. In Dillard's estimation, we may be underdressed for such a real encounter, because I see no crash helmets in the congregation this morning. Now, let's forget for a moment those who maybe are singing, I shall not be moved, on continuous loop. Their position is clear and apparently unshakable. So I'll put those aside for a moment. But for me, I believe that the very essence of being human religiously is our capacity to pivot, to switch directions when we need to be influenced, and to actually be impacted by one another. Being human religiously is not to be sphinx-like shrines to our own individual certainty. It's not to be trees planted by the water, unmoved, unmovable, and unshakable. Humans, I believe, have this innate capacity for pivoting, for changing, for shifting. After all, we learned how to pivot as toddlers by taking a series of short, rocking steps and adjusting direction a little bit at a time. Toddlers learn to pivot smoothly. Then they learn to shift from one direction to another. Only by pivoting do any of us learn how to walk. Pivoting, however, as you know, is not merely a physical exercise. It's a psychological one. It's a spiritual one. It's a social one. This is why I've liked the insights from Shawn Ginwright's book, The Four Pivots, Reimagining Justice, Reimagining Ourselves, because he reclaims that capacity that we all have to pivot if we are to truly engage the deep changes that are so needed in our time. Deep changes, not just surface changes, not just surface tinkering, but deeper change. Climate change leads us to deeper change. Racial injustice leads us to a deeper change. Gun violence, the relentless gun violence that we have experienced, leads us to a place of deeper change. Economic injustice calls us towards a deeper change. The rise of authoritarianism leads us to respond with deeper change. I'll stop there. It'll get too overwhelming, but we'll just have those on the list. Deep changes become deep changes because they also necessarily involve us. They necessarily involve personal transformation as well as social changes. I believe religious communities have a unique role in helping support and challenge us towards this kind of deep change. At the same time that we must partner with all kinds of organizations that are doing good, working for justice in this world, we also must have some personal skin in the game ourselves. We must have the courage to reimagine not just what's out there, but also what's in here that must change and that must shift. Such a reimagining requires us to recognize at least these pivots that Ginwright names. The first pivot, this is the review, is described as a pivot in our awareness from lens to mirror. Ginwright explains it in this way. Instead of viewing the world through a thick lens, that is, as analysts of social problems, we must also view it as a mirror of ourselves. This involves the practice of self-reflection and exploration of who we are as individuals and how we contribute to the world we wish to create. This exposes our tendency to sometimes look out there rather than also in here in order to address some of the issues that require the deeper change of our time. The practice of deeper reflection, which Ginwright calls mirror work, goes hand in hand with deep social change, the kind of change that we need now. We have to acknowledge our own part, our own complicity with the big challenges of our time, like racism, climate emergency, growing social and economic inequality, gun violence, and the erosion of a compelling meaning. Change isn't going to happen or even be sustained unless we also, along with the structural and social changes that we involve ourselves in, also alongside that do the personal change that we need to do as well. Does that make sense to you? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay. All right. It's a both and, in other words. It's not enough to say it's all out there, since we have the courage to pivot in here as well. The second pivot, Ginwright proposes to pivot towards connection from transactional to transformational. This is a radical shift in the kind of world that we tend to live in. Oftentimes in our social change work even, there can be this embedded or implicit rule, what can you do for me? Or what do I want you to do? And that's only part of the path forward. It's a part, but it's only part of the path forward. We also need to ask what Ginwright calls the right first question. What do we want to become? What do we want to become? In other words, we have to be implicated in the kind of change that we want to see. And now for the third pivot. Drum roll, please. Ginwright says that engaging in deep change means that we also need to shift our perspective, pivoting from our tendency to focus just on the problems to also focusing on the desired and emerging possibilities. Sometimes we're so easily distracted, so easily dismayed or deflated by the enormity of the problems that we face that we cower into what Ginwright and others have called a problem-loving approach. They define problem-loving as a tendency for leaders to assume that the awareness of the problem is the same as solving it. The myth of problem-loving is that knowledge of the problem is all we need to solve it. We think that we're sometimes fixing the problem by understanding how bad the problem is. We love the problem. We acknowledge so much because we acknowledge what the problem is. But that, again, is not enough. The problem with problem-loving is that we can become so satisfied with the discussing of the problem that we become uncomfortable with imagining the solutions. In the midst of a relentless problem-loving conversation, I often like to ask the question, what would you like to see happen? Now, it's a kind of annoying and disruptive question to ask sometimes, because it moves us from that to a temporary place of discomfort in our problem-loving approaches sometimes. We all know, however, that misery loves company. And I'm with Henry David Thoreau, who said, if misery loves company, misery has company enough. So I'll keep asking the question, what would you like to see happen? What would you like to see happen? I'm drilling that in you so that maybe it'll be somewhat contagious. I think sometimes shifting the conversations can be a great way for us to do the deeper kind of work that sometimes we might avoid. Ginwright points out how our language often reinforces our problem-loving tendency. He encourages us to pay attention to the terms or the language that we often use in our justice work. For example, he asked his students to pick a social problem that they really had some passion about. And he noticed that his students often used words like these to describe it: resist, defend, disrupt, demand, fight, struggle, confront, destroy, deconstruct, or similar words. All great words, all that have their place, but it's a certain kind of mindset that he became aware of. And so then he asked them to experiment and kind of taking on another lens. And rather than using these words, to try some different words like these to describe their concern. Reimagine, dream, discover, create, design, play, invent, visualize, build. You can try this now or sometime this week with something that you really care about. Instead of focusing on just what you're against, try, even if just temporarily, try to talk about what you are for as well. So take gun violence, for example. We know we are against the relentlessness of that violence, insensitive, tragic kind of violence. But what are we for? How would we give voice to and articulate what we are for? For a world that perhaps allows people to feel more supported rather than acting out some of their anger in these horrendous ways. For a world in which we don't need as many weapons. For a world that can support the kind of peaceful resolution, the kind of social supports, the kind of peaceful relationships. That orients us in a different way. A world that teaches even young children ways to resolve conflict. A world that diminishes the production of guns in order to put its energy into more direct and peaceful methods with one another. Do you get a sense of what I'm saying here? That we can certainly focus on the problem as a part of it, but we also get energized, I think, when we're able to articulate what is it that we want to see. And that can oftentimes mobilize us in some different directions than if we're only focusing on the problem itself. I often feel that there are enough Eeyores in any conversation. Eeyores are when someone like Winnie the Pooh says, "Lovely day, isn't it?" would be quick to reply in true Eeyore fashion, "If it is a good morning," which I doubt. Ginwright points out that we can never achieve what we want simply by pointing out what we don't want. To rather than fall into the sinkhole of problem-loving by the endless chorus of "ain't it awful," we can begin conversations to articulate as well, what if we, or how might we? Ready for the fourth pivot? Yes? No? Okay, yeah, okay. The fourth pivot is one that allows us to be more present to ourselves, to one another, and to this world. Ginwright asserts that we need to divest from our addiction to frenzy to find a calmer, gentler, and more productive flow state. Another way to say this is we really are to bring about the deep changes that our world needs right now, we must not burn ourselves out in the meantime. If we're burned out, if we overload ourselves, if we try to do too many things all at once, we probably might not be able to bring about any earthly good. This flow state has been known by artists and athletes, described often as being in the zone, that place where creativity and energy can sometimes be contagious. It's the ability to be absorbed and to be focused. It's an ability to be captivated by our passion and our concern. One way to embody the flow is rather than give into the tendency in our rapid-paced, quick-fix culture by asking such things as, can this be completed sooner? And usually there's attached to it an unreasonable kind of timeline. We could change the pace by asking instead, how might we complete this with deeper meaning, deeper purpose, and intentionality? The image that I just had is like tapping the brakes a little bit, slowing ourselves down a little bit so that we can allow ourselves more time to sit with our ideas and abdicate the addiction to frenzy that sometimes has us rather than us having it. Or we might take time to give it a rest. To time for rest in order to restore our energy and our perspective. In weaning ourselves from the hustle and frenzy that often takes over, we might actually find time to discern individually and collectively, where are we most authentically called to make a difference? What is ours to do? Where can we make the most impact? Rather than diverting our energies in so many different directions at once, allow ourselves to clarify through asking questions like that, to clarify, to hone, and to focus that energy in powerful and impactful ways. Ginwright passes on the wisdom from Howard Thurman, which I like so much. Thurman says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So to pivot as individuals or a religious organization means to change directions when the direction we aspire towards doesn't take us there. The pivot requires us to reflect more, to make U-turns, to reorient ourselves. And for some of us, pivoting means to change our pace. So to pivot means to have courage to ask not just what is the problem, but what part do we truly want to have in making it happen? This week I had some inspiration come my way in an unexpected way. A group of retired clergy met in our building this week. They were part of a national hybrid conference for retired clergy and their partners that were meeting across the country, and our AV team lead, John Cleaney, was instrumental in helping support that effort. During one of the afternoon breaks, on my way to grab some of their coffee, I was able to gather with a few friends in the Warner Room that were there for the conference. Someone asked, when was this congregation founded? Richard Speck said it was around the time of the Civil War, and in fact it was right after the Civil War, in the year 1865, 1866. By 1868, the congregation had built its first building on West Street in Wilmington. None of you were there. I'm just letting you know. I started thinking about what that period of launching a congregation must have been like in those times. During a time when this country had been torn apart and fatally polarized. During a time when many had experienced the ugliness of war. During a time when the legacy of slavery was so horribly apparent. During a time when parents, spouses, and others were still grieving over their loved ones who had died or were injured. During a time when newly freed enslaved people grasping for whatever faith and freedom they had or could actually find. During a time, 1865, when the President Lincoln of the United States had just been assassinated. In the midst of all of this and more, there was a courageous group of people that dared to create a Unitarian congregation in the city of Wilmington. Rather than retreat, relinquish, ruminate, resent, or recline, there was a spirit that inspired a group of people, our congregation's ancestors, to pivot from despair to hope, from grief to resolution, from retreat to engagement. And I hope you can actually feel that through line that connects us to their relentless courage. I hope that you can feel their expanded perspective that allowed them to look forward and not back for the impetus of what they needed to do in the moment that they were in. May we be continually inspired by their capacity to pivot and their courage.
So one of the pivots discussed today is having presence, to stop focusing on accomplishing so many tasks and instead to be more intentional about what you are doing and allowing yourself to rest. This has resonated with me in my work life recently. I am part of a leadership team at work, and we recently began to advocate for our colleagues of color. But because we tried to do so many things at once, we botched it. The team had to have hard conversations and listen to criticisms that were true, but still difficult to hear. It took courage for us to hear our mistakes without getting defensive, but our colleagues of color also channeled courage to speak the truth to us. We've learned that we need to slow down and take the time to listen before trying to do something. And I am gathering up the courage to continue this work, even though I will likely make more mistakes. A difficult idea for a perfectionist. But something that takes courage is often something worth doing. Our church has done courageous work, and there is more to be done. Your donations of time, energy, and money all help our church to do more courageous work. The 4 ways to give financial donations will be listed during the offertory music. Please join me now in dedicating our offering. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
Everyone born, a place at the table.
Thank you, choir. Before we extinguish the chalice, I'm going to ask Travis Laster to come to the podium to share an important announcement.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Adris. So for those of you who don't know me or don't remember me, I'm Travis Laster. We have a big event coming up on the 11th and 12th. That's a summit where we're going to do some strategic planning for the church. It's an event called Reimagining and Reclaiming Our Future. Now, why is it so important for us all to prioritize this event? I feel like I can give you some unique perspective on this because the last time I stood in front of you was the annual meeting about 5 months ago. We had a great discussion at that annual meeting, but some of the discussions had some tough issues. One of the things we talked about was that, in part because of COVID, we went negative in our cash flow this past year, and we had to borrow from our reserves. That's a problem that we have to think about. And part of what we talked about in the annual meeting was we need to have a plan, and we need to have a long-range plan. One of the other things that we did at the annual meeting was we had some great discussion about how to deploy our resources. Do we deploy our resources to RE, our children's RE program? I personally think that Catherine deserves a combat medal for keeping that RE program together during COVID. But what we need to do right now is think about whether we want to rebuild it and how important that is to the church. Now, I could give you a very impassioned speech about why I think that's extremely important. But part of what we need to do at a strategic planning summit is figure out where we want to devote our resources, where our passions really are. So this strategic summit is critical, but it's also going to be fun. We have Reverend Larry, who has done these types of summits for most of his career before he went back into ministry. He was a consultant, and he led these things. He knows how to do them. And let me give you a little bit of a secret away, a little bit of the punchline. The pivots, they're about us. The pivots, they're things we need to think about at this strategic summit. We need to think about what gets us impassioned, what gets us excited, what gets us positioned so that this church is here for another 150 years. Thank you to those of you who have signed up so far. We have about 65 of you signed up. We're grateful for that. We appreciate it. We'd like to have about 100. We'd like to have a cross-section of our community. We'd like to have folks who have been longtime members. We'd like to have folks who are new members. We'd like to have folks who are younger members. We need all types of perspectives so that we can come to a consensus about our vision. If you've signed up, great. If you haven't signed up yet, please think about doing so, and today is the day. We need you all to sign up today for planning purposes. If you're going to be out of town, okay, we get it. But if you're not coming because maybe your favorite Premier League team plays on Friday, or maybe because you've got a Tai Chi class that regularly meets on Saturday, please think about joining us for this. This is going to be fun, and it's going to be important. There's going to be registration after the church service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Travis. May you be brave enough to expose your aching woundedness and reveal your vulnerability. May you speak your deepest truths, knowing that they will change as you do. May you sing the music within you, composing your own melody, playing your song with all your heart. May you draw, paint, sculpt, and sew, showing the world your vision. May you write letters, poetry, biography, slogans, graffiti, the great novel, laying bare your words to love and hate. May you love even though your heart breaks again and again. And until the end of your days, may your life be filled with possibilities and courage. Please join in singing hymn 114, Forward Through the Ages, Rising in Body or Spirit.
Benediction this morning, I offer these words: one more step. We will take one more step till there is peace for us and everyone. We'll take one more step. Now, I want to make a few unrelated comments. One is, I'm a man of faith. The other is, I'm wearing Phillies colors today. And the third is, we need to capture that spirit. So let's sing along with Kathy. Take me out to the ball game.
Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if we never get back. 'Cause we root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.